Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to do a sewn mouth effect, a very horror-esque sort of gruesome effect. And you can find these online. You can find how to make stitches across the mouth, but we're going to take it a step further and actually reconstruct the mouth and just give it quite a terror and tortured look today. So I picked this picture because we can see the mouth clearly, and I like the texture and the look of it. And what we're going to do is duplicate our main layer so that if we do any editing on it, we still have our original there preserved. Now I'm going to get my patch tool, which is J on the shortcut key and right here on your toolbar. I'm just going to select the mouth, including the shadows below and around the lips with the patch tool, and then I'm going to drag it up over here into this area of skin and patch over what was the mouth. Now you'll notice the mouth is gone. There's a few flaws there, and you can smooth those out if you want with your clone tool, which is S on the menu, and just kind of get them looking better. But for right now I'm just going to leave it so that we can move on quickly. Now I'm going to reconstruct the mouth so that we can have it sewn shut in a very horror-like fashion. And what I need to do is create a new layer. And in this layer I'm going to name my layer Mouth. I'm going to take a color sampled from the actual image, which if you have your brush tool active, which I do, you can sample it using the Alt key. I'm actually just going to sample kind of a dark brown here. I've got my opacity set at about 35% for this brush, and here's my settings: the pixels and the hardness. And it might vary depending on the resolution of the image you're using, but I'm going to make a very crude, intentionally crude mouth right here in this area of the face that we patched over. Now I want it to look jagged and a bit horrific because that's the effect we're going for. And once I get it about what I want, I'm going to set my layer to multiply. You'll notice that darkens it down, and then I'm going to take my brush, same layer still, and I'm going to soften my brush up, lighten my opacity, and just paint in some shadows. I am using a tablet and a pen for this, which makes the pen pressure effect a lot easier to deal with when you're making lines of varied lengths and weight. If you don't have it, you can still do it with a mouse. It's just an easier effect to achieve if you do have a pen or a tablet. They're pretty cheap in the stores now. So there I have kind of a messed up effect. I'm going to go ahead and make some jagged lines as if the lips are parched, still using the same brush, same color, and with this layer again set to multiply mode. This just adds a little more detail. I am using soft brush at this point, just a standard round brush, just giving it kind of a parched lip look. I'm guessing you don't drink much when your lips are sewn shut. So now that we have that and we have a very sad, evil looking mouth, I'm actually going to drop the opacity of that down a little bit just so it's not so hard lined. And now what I'm going to do is start creating the stitching. I'll make a new layer, and that new layer we're going to name Stitch. And on that stitch layer I'm going to get my brush again, just a normal round brush. I'm going to bring my opacity all the way up. I'm going to bring my hardness up to 70, 75, somewhere in there percent. Now this effect is going to be a lot easier to achieve with pen pressure again. However, you can do it even with a mouse. I'm just going to paint in my stitches with a fairly small brush, and I'm going to make them really jagged and almost random. And the effect I'm going for here is just a very crude, tormented sort of look. I don't want it to look too planned. I want it to look horrific and violent, as if it was done very cruelly, I suppose, for lack of a better word. And so I'm going to vary the lengths on it to where there'll be some longer and some shorter, and they won't crisscross the same in every way. And once I get it to where I think I've got some nice lines here that I'm starting to like, then I'm just going to leave it be. For our purposes today, I think this is probably about enough. We just want it to be very noticeable Now I'm going to take that layer again, set it to multiply. What that does is just helps it blend a little bit better with the shadows and lights in your image. You don't always have to set it to multiply. Totally up to you. I'm going to zoom out to take a look at it. It's starting to shape up, but it's obviously photoshopped and doesn't look great yet. We're going to reduce the opacity of that layer just a little bit to help it blend in more with the color and not stand out so much. And then underneath it, I need to put some dimension to these stitches by adding shading. So I'm going to add a new layer below stitch. You can do that by holding down Control, clicking on the new layer button, and then I'm going to name it Stitch Shadow. Here with the Stitch Shadow, I'm going to grab the brush tool again. About the same weight of brush is fine. I'm actually going to reduce the hardness though quite a bit, and I'm going to reduce the opacity, and I'm going to paint in shadows where I want them across the lips, just to make it look as though these stitches are catching light and reflecting shadows into the lips. And you can see the dimensionality of where the stitches are touching the lips and where they're not. It gives our mouth also a better realistic feel to it, more dimensionality, and more real is better, right, for the effects you want to achieve. And the way you do this will depend on where your light source in your image is coming from. I rely on you to kind of know how you want your shadows to look. But there we have some shadows, and we can just go ahead and, since we were doing it with a light opacity, we can paint them over a little more to get the darker shadows. And we can fill in even with the mouth some on this shadow layer. And I'm going to set it to multiply. Now that automatically makes it quite a bit darker, so if it gets too dark for you, just back it up a little bit on the opacity and keep painting. Again, I set it to multiply just simply so you can see the texture beneath the shadows, and the shadows don't overpower. If you just paint with a normal brush, then the color you're using will block out anything beneath it. Now that's good, but the mouth really doesn't look tortured enough yet for me, so we're going to start adding some scars. I want to do that below the stitches, but above the stitch shadows. So I'm actually going to just create a new layer right there, and I'm going to name it Scars. These are going to be very simple scars, just really light, old, healed scars. So I'm going to sample the skin color using my color picker, and just use that light skin color. I'm going to grab my brush tool. Again, haven't changed brushes, same round brush. I'm just going to reduce the opacity of it, actually a little bit more, to about 8%. Enlarge it, and I'm going to bring the hardness up to about 25-26%. And then I'm going to paint onto this. I'm just going to paint a little bit at first, and then set my layer to screen, and you'll see where I painted. And I'm going to start just brushing in lightly what I imagine to be scars where this mouth was abused in the process of being stitched. So they're just crisscross scars, as if it was cut, scratched, clawed, whatever you want to imagine. You can do these however you want for horror purposes. You can add them all over the face, obviously, but I'm just going to add them around the mouth to give it kind of a rough, scarred up look. Now that I've done that, I want to add in some more shading. I'm actually going to do this with levels adjustment. This just allows me a little more control. When I click my levels adjustment, it's going to come up above the current layer I'm working on, which in this case is fine. Above scars is a good place for it to be. I'm going to take my center dragger, and I'm just going to pull it to the right a little bit. And I'm going to take my left black point and also pull it to the right. You'll notice it just darkening it down a little bit, and that's fine. I'll close that out, and I'm going to get my brush tool again, and what I want to do is fill this with black so that nothing shows up right now and I can paint it in. So I can go to Edit, Fill with black, OK, and that effect vanishes for the moment. Now I'm going to get a white brush, zoom in a little bit, again using just a light opacity, soft edged round brush. I'm going to start painting in some of that effect from that levels adjustment I just got. And what I'm doing is creating kind of a bruised look around where the stitches have gone in and building it up with that light opacity. It also creates almost like an indented look in the flesh where something was punctured or something is pulling against it. Gives it more dimensionality. Again, anything you can do to make it look more real is going to be better in the end. I'm going to do this really quick. You can take this to whatever extremes you'd like and make it look as real as you like. So there we go, we're getting some more depth to it. And that's alright. Now it's starting to look as if it actually goes through the skin. But on top of that, we need some agitation to the skin, which we're going to do with some redness. I'm actually going to put that on top of our levels adjustment and just put red as the name for that layer. I'm going to go over here in my color picker again, and I'm just going to grab a red that I think looks good. I'm just going to go around down here and get kind of a dark burnt red look. Get my brush, which is still set at 8% opacity, and I'm going to set my layer again to multiply, which is a really useful overlay mode. There's several modes you can do this with, but I'm going to stick with multiply for now. And I'm painting in again with that color red, very light opacity. This is a soft brush, still same brush, round brush, and I'm just painting in where the stitches have pierced the skin, so we'll see that redness, that bruised and damaged look. And you can extend this as far as you want. You know, you can give a little redness all around. Depends on how new you want this to look, as though it was done recently or it's been there for a while. We just want to give it kind of an agitated effect to make it look like recently it's been strained or pulled or abused. And I'm just liberally painting around here. Just whatever I think looks good. What that light opacity brush allows you to do, though, is to build it up. So I'm using multiple pen strokes, brush strokes, if you will, on each of these areas and just building it up and drawing it in until I like the way that it looks. Now I might actually take that same brush and just kind of brush over the lips to give them that kind of red tint, just a little more dimensionality. You'll recall we rebuilt these lips from scratch, so we have to make lips practically for this whole tutorial. And we just want to give it that bruised and worn look. So now that we're getting that sort of reddened effect, we stand back and look, and it's looking pretty violent and pretty gruesome at this point. And that's great. You can take it as far as you want from here. You can add some more adjustment levels. For instance, you can darken it down a little bit, give it more of a horror effect, say with a curves layer adjustment. Another useful thing to do is you can go on to your duplicated layer and you can use your dodge and burn tools, which are O on the shortcuts. And I'll just give you an example. I'm going to use my burn tool here, midtones at exposure 15, and just kind of brush over. And what it'll do is just give kind of a strained look to the texture of the skin. And this is a damaging effect that I'm using on my actual layer, but it helps give kind of a more dark horror feel. And you can use it all around and put it wherever you like, under the eyes. But for our sewn look, that'll do for today, and I'll show you what we started with. That was our original. That was our damaged mouth with sewn appearance. And you can take this effect and use it to as much of an extreme as you like. You can use the same effect on eyes or anything else that you want to sew shut. Hope this helps and gives you some ideas. Go out and be creative, make your own, and then link it up. Show me what you did.